Faith doesn't make grace work. Grace makes faith possible. Ephesians 2:8 says, "By grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God." Grace is the foundation. Faith is simply your response to what's already been provided. Religion says, try harder, believe more, earn it. But grace says, it's already done. Just receive. Romans 5:2 tells us, we have access by faith into this grace in which we stand. Faith doesn't move God. It moves you into what He's already finished. You don't need perfect faith. You need a perfect Savior, and your trust in Him connects you to His finished work. So don't focus on trying to have big faith. Focus on the big grace behind it. That's when faith flows. That's when peace comes. That's when you stand, not striving, but secure. This is Grace Life Living, where grace supplies and faith receives. Grace made the way, faith just walks it out. Subscribe now. This is RUACH HAKODESH. Would you like the next episode to be You Are Seated, Not Striving, or Grace Doesn't Run Out?